Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Found in Transition, A Mother's Evolution During Her Child's Gender Change, by Paria Hassouri, M.D. Narrated by Siiri Scott. Publisher's note: the material in this book is intended for education. No expressed or implied guarantee of the effects of the use of the recommendations can be given or liability taken. Some names have been changed to protect privacy. Minds are like parachutes. They only function when open. Thomas Robert Dewar. Prologue. Thanksgiving 2017. Iron. "Mom, I left something on my bed for you to iron," my 14-year-old says when he sees me come downstairs. The hair on the back of my neck rises. My heart starts galloping in my chest, but I reply with the most casual, nonchalant, "Okay," I can muster. It is Thanksgiving Day. We are going to leave for my mom's in just a couple of hours. I hate ironing. I avoid buying clothes that are difficult to iron, and when my husband occasionally asks me to iron something for him while he jumps in the shower, I get irritated every time. Yet, within half an hour of my son's request, I find myself back upstairs and ironing his dress without saying a word, while trying to calm the panicky thoughts in my head. Never in any of my visions of myself as a mother had I imagined a scene like this. Yet, here I am. We are waiting for an appointment with my child's third therapist in 6 months, which have probably been the hardest 6 months of my life. It's been difficult to shut down my racing mind for even 1 minute. I wish, I want, I fear, and what if statements have taken over my brain and will not give it a moment of respite. As the iron goes back and forth over the maroon H&M dress my son must have bought at the mall on his own, I find myself in a trance, praying to a God that my agnostic self has never really believed in. I am bargaining and pleading and negotiating with the universe. Dear God or universe, if this is true, if he is a girl, why weren't there any signs? Why didn't he ever want to be a princess, or play with dolls, or grow his hair, or show an interest in baking, or give any single sign that he might be a girl? Dear universe, please let him be safe. What if he gets beaten up or bullied? What if he hurts himself? Please let no one hurt him. Please let me not be scared every time I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize. Dear God, what if he really is a trans girl? When and how do I say goodbye to the child I thought I knew and accept the new one? If he isn't a girl, and this is just some teenage angst he's going through, how unhappy and depressed and lost must he be to believe that changing his gender is the answer? What kind of parent have I been to raise a child who is this lost? How can I say that I'm his mother when I don't know him? All I've ever wanted is to be a mother, and now I'm questioning my own identity as one. Dear God, how am I going to send him to college? Who will his college roommates be? He can't be in a room with boy roommates. He will feel so out of place. He can't room with girls. They may not be comfortable with him. He can't be in a single dorm or apartment, even more isolated than he already is, at even higher risk for hurting himself. He can't live at home. He can't. I can't. I need him out and independent and not in my face all the time. But how will I sleep when he isn't under my roof where I can check on him? Dear God, if this is true, please let this not be the first thing people notice about him. My baby is brilliant and has the biggest heart in the world. Please, let people see that when they see him. Please don't let them see a trans girl before they see the brilliance of his mind or the size of his heart. Dear God or universe, if he is a trans girl, then please let me see him as a girl one day, not just call him by a new name and refer to him as her. If he really is a girl, please let me look at him one day and see my daughter, see her in my heart as who she is, not as the boy that I carried and nursed and raised and lost, but just as my beautiful daughter. Please, please. I don't remember if I first told my husband that Ideen had asked me to iron his outfit for today, and it was a dress, or if I first texted my sister, who was already at my mom's house, so she could warn my mother that Ideen would be coming in a dress. I just remember that after ironing it, I laid it back on his bed, my hands shaking, and told them both. For the remainder of this book, I refer to my middle child as my daughter Ava, and I use the female pronouns she and her even when I am talking about her past, before I came to accept and see her as a girl. It may take a few to adjust to this use of she and her when I am describing a time in my journey when I still clearly saw her as my son. However, knowing what I know today, I use female pronouns even in reference to her past, to honor the girl she was on the inside, even before she knew it herself. I also often use her current legal name, Ava, to refer to her even at times before we used it. This is to minimize the use of her birth name, Ideen, which the trans community often refers to as one's dead name. I use male pronouns and her old name only when I quote direct conversations, correspondence, or my own thoughts from the past. Chapter 1. I'm a girl. My cell phone rang. It was May 24th, 2017, and although it was only 5 a.m. Thailand time, my husband and I were not in bed. Babek and I had just left our little bungalow on Koh Phangan to head to the beach. We had decided the night before to set an alarm so that we could catch the magical sunrise at least one morning while we were there. Being at the sanctuary on Koh Phangan was like being on Gilligan's Island. We had flown from Los Angeles to Taipei, Taipei to Bangkok, and Bangkok to Koh Samui, and then finally taken a little boat from the island of Koh Samui to the smaller island of Koh Phangan. For this yoga retreat, we had definitely broken our rule of we won't go anywhere we can't fly direct. Babek was fairly new to yoga, so the trip was not his idea. I'd been following the instructor, Jake, for at least 5 years, but I wouldn't exactly describe myself as a yogi either. I had stumbled into one of Jake's classes. It wasn't the yoga, but his words that brought me repeatedly back to his classes, often finding myself in tears during Shavasana, lying still at the end of class. Jake shared anecdotes about his childhood or about self-doubt, about using yoga in the continual process of self-healing. His words took me back to being in middle school. I was one of only a handful of brown kids in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, desperately wanting to not be different, to belong. On the mat, at the end of Jake's classes, I came to realize that a part of me was still that little girl, trying to prove my worth despite all my accomplishments, and looking for acceptance. I started stalking Jake, seeking the rare occasion when his class time didn't conflict with my hectic schedule. One day, I wrote what his class meant to me in a blog post, and then printed the post and handed it to him in an envelope at the end of class. I was afraid that once he read my words, he'd think I was crazy, but I took the chance. I had to show him that his words mattered, that sharing these personal details with his students mattered. That was the beginning of our friendship. Eventually, I made a whole group of yoga friends. who subsequently became friends with Babek, and several of us went on the 10-day retreat together without our kids. I knew that all that travel and all those connections would be worth the magical experience Jake would provide, and it had been magical, up until that phone call. We had left our busy lives as two physicians living and practicing in the heart of Beverly Hills and landed on a tropical island with no cars and no television. When I asked the sanctuary's barista if there was any way to get a coffee before our first morning yoga session, he replied, amused, "No. Why would you need coffee earlier than 8? You're on vacation." I soon learned that I could flow from Warrior 2 to Half Moon Pose without a drop of caffeine. I also gave up any attempt to put on makeup. It would just melt on my face in the humidity. I put my hair in a ponytail, exposing my true "I woke up like this" face, and even stopped shaving my legs because there were too many mosquito bites to work around. All the clothes I'd packed had been unnecessary. The air was too sticky to wear anything other than a sports bra and shorts or a bathing suit. Hairstyling, makeup, and clothes, the security blankets of my adulthood, which helped compensate for what I felt I lacked in my teen years, had no place on the island. Even my running clothes and shoes did not leave the suitcase, since the longest beach on the island was only about 1/4 of a mile. The new identity I had worked so hard to establish over the last 5 years, that of runner, had nowhere to roam on Koh Phangan. But the 3 daily yoga sessions, interspersed with swimming in the Gulf of Thailand, in a place free from smog and a single honking car horn, let alone a symphony of them, was exactly what I'd needed. The only symphonies were the sounds of the tropics, and the food, vegan Thai food, that didn't need fake cashew cheese or curry sauce to make it not just palatable, but mouth-watering. My parents were staying with our 3 kids back in Los Angeles. School was still in session, and our kids were in 10th, 8th, and 5th grade. We would make it back just in time for 5th and 8th grade graduation. My mother, who had always been chronically late picking me up from school, leaving me waiting on the front bench alone and wanting to crawl out of my own skin, had assured me she would get all 3 kids back and forth to school and all their activities on time. It had been a long time since Babek and I had been on vacation alone together, and our 18th anniversary coincided with the retreat dates, so the timing seemed right. My phone rang, and the screen showed a Los Angeles number I didn't recognize. It was Mr. Wilson, the vice president of the middle school. "We know that you're in Thailand, and it is still very early there. We waited as late as we could in the school day before calling you. Everything is okay, but we still had to call." If I was going to get a call from school, of course it would be about my middle child. The calls had started in kindergarten, and they were always about my middle child. The history teacher, Ms. Lewis, was on the line with Mr. Wilson, and she took over. "Ideen told me that he's hurting himself because he has something he hasn't told you, and he doesn't know how to tell you." Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Never before had Ideen, whom we now call Ava, tried in any way to hurt herself. The other phone calls from school had always been about her being depressed or getting upset in class. Even a teacher who ignored her raised hand, wanting to give other kids the chance to answer a question once in a while, could upset her enough to require the school counselor to intervene. But the phone calls had never been about physical harm. And when we left Los Angeles, Ava seemed happier than she had been in years. She had just finished playing the Pirate King in the school's production of The Pirates of Penzance, and as I watched her sing, "Oh, better far to live and die," in a deep baritone voice, waving her sword and stomping her booted foot, I thought to myself, I've never seen him happier. I'm so happy that he's finally found himself. Mr. Wilson said, He has been using scissors to try to cut his wrists." I couldn't believe it. Ava was always scared of everything, so cautious even when using a butter knife. They had to be mistaken. The history teacher continued. He told us that he is questioning his gender identity, and he thinks he is a girl. He didn't know how to tell you, and the thought of telling you caused him enough distress to try to hurt himself. My head started spinning. This doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound like my child. He is not a girl. He has never done anything that would suggest that he has any gender identity issues. We talk all the time. We've talked a lot in this last year." Ms. Lewis said, "I think there is probably something to what he is saying. We talked for a long time. You have an amazing child. He was very worried about me sharing our conversation with you." It didn't seem believable that Ava would be scared to talk to me, given all the conversations we routinely had, let alone hurt herself over it. "Look, he told his dad and me in the fall that he is bisexual. I think he is gay. He put on eyeliner for the school musical and he really liked it. He doesn't realize that you can be a gay boy and wear eyeliner or makeup for fun sometimes." The morning after the first performance of Pirates of Penzance, Ava had come down to the kitchen. "Mom, I did try washing my face, but I couldn't get all the eyeliner off, so I'm just going to school like this." I looked at her eyes, the previous night's eyeliner still mostly visible. "That's fine," I had replied. A few days later, I found her phone filled with selfies that were zoomed in on her lined eyes and thought, "Yep, he's gay." "Believe me, I know my child," I rambled defensively to Ms. Lewis. "I'm going to sort this all out when I get back." But she repeated that based on their conversation, she thought that it was possible Ava really was experiencing gender dysphoria, distress over sex and gender assigned at birth. I kept talking back, defending, disputing. Who does she think she is? I thought. She had one conversation with my child, and she thinks she knows him better than I do? We were on the phone for at least an hour while I paced back and forth on the beach. Babek kept trying to ask me what was going on, and I mouthed to him, "It's the school. It's Ideen again." Mr. Wilson said they hadn't told my parents why Ava had tried to hurt herself, only what she had done, and I felt myself breathe a sigh of relief. The last thing I needed was my mom trying to address this with my child and saying the wrong things, or criticizing me as a mother for raising an utterly confused child. At some point, the sun rose, but I didn't notice it. I kept arguing, defending, denying, reassuring, while Babek sat on the beach staring at the horizon. I never asked him if he actually noticed the sunrise, or just sat there and wondered what was happening on the other end of that line. Once I hung up, we walked back to our little bungalow, and I told him about the conversation. We both cried. I wept not because I thought Ava might be trans, which I didn't consider even a remote possibility, but because she had tried to hurt herself, because she was so lost and confused or depressed or attention-seeking or whatever she was that made her resort to self-harm. I cried because I was tired of being her mother. We called my mom. Ava had been the one who insisted the school not tell her grandparents the reason she was harming herself. My mom tried to reassure us that everything was fine. They had picked Ava up from school and talked to her, and although they didn't know why she had done it, she really seemed fine. We were not due to fly back for another 5 days, but we said we'd look into getting home earlier. "No, you don't need to do that," my mom said. "Raising teenagers is hard. These things are going to keep coming up. You guys need a little time together and to invest in each other if you're going to get through these next years with your kids. We're here. We're watching him." We then spoke to Ava herself. She was crying. I could picture her, phone to her ear, head and shoulders slumped, trying to disappear. "Listen, I love you. Everything is going to be okay," I tried to reassure her. "Did the school tell you why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes, they did," I answered, although I didn't spell out, "The school said you think you are a girl." I couldn't say the words. "Don't worry about the why. We'll talk about all of that when we get home. We'll figure this out. We love you. There is nothing worth hurting yourself over. I need you to promise to never do that again. We love you. Everything is going to be okay." "But they told you the reason?" she asked again. Maybe she wasn't sure I really understood. She probably needed to hear me say the words, "You believe you are a girl, and that's okay." But I didn't say them. I wouldn't say them. This was the first of many times that I would fail her over the next few months. "Yes, they told us. Don't worry about the why," I said again. "We can figure this all out when we get back. We love you." My words probably sounded to her like, "We'll fix this part of you that is broken and needs to be fixed." Then she spoke to her dad, her Baba. I heard mutterings of love and "it's going to be okay." When he hung up, we sat there, crying, unsure of what to do. We couldn't just hop on the next flight home. This is what happens when you break your rule of "we won't fly anywhere we can't go direct" in the biggest possible way. We decided to go to our 8 a.m. yoga session and come back and see what flights we could arrange, then deal with getting a private boat to take us off Koh Phangan. To get to our yoga class, we walked through the jungle and up the equivalent of 7 or 8 flights of stairs made up of mud, dirt, and wooden planks, to a platform with a straw roof and mosquito netting walls. The steep climb up each time was meditative and left me breathless. Just when I thought I couldn't handle more steps, I reached the yoga hut. The space was magical, suspended in the middle of a jungle. But as we walked up this time, my mind was racing rather than calm. We rolled out our mats, hearts heavy, teary-eyed. Usually we arrived for class early to warm up a little. On that day, we were the last to get there. We looked around the group. Babek was the one to tell them we'd gotten some bad news about one of our kids from home and might have to leave the retreat early. He knew that if I opened my mouth, choking sobs would pour out instead of words. The tears started to stream down my face, and I just nodded to Jake to start class so I could close my eyes and start breathing. I needed to breathe. About half the group were good friends we'd known before going on the retreat. The other half were acquaintances or people we'd met there. We told our friends everything. One of the many blessings we've had is friends that we could tell everything to from the start. Friends who made no judgments, who kept things confidential, who held our hands and lent us their ears and wiped away our tears as often as we needed. Later, when I talked to other families going through the same thing, I learned that many of them had had to keep everything to themselves. Many had friends and family who didn't understand, and many coupled parents were at odds with one another. We never had to worry about judgment or lack of understanding from friends. For me, someone who can't hold anything in, whose eyes betray me even before the words spill out, our friends' compassion was sanity-saving. After class, we went back to our bungalow and started making phone calls. The best travel arrangements we could make would get us home only 2 days earlier at a significant cost. We didn't know what to do. On the one hand, my mom kept reassuring us that everything was fine and urging us to take this time to be together. On the other hand, Babek kept reiterating, I can't imagine that our child is going through something like this, and we are halfway around the world while it's happening. We ended up staying, but I later found out just how much the intervening days had shaken up my parents. My mom had given us all those reassurances because she knew it would be hard for us to change our plans, but until we got back, she was on constant guard. She kept finding reasons to go into Ava's room to check on her, or send her older brother Arman in to see what she was doing. She got up multiple times in the night to check and make sure Ava was in her bed and sleeping. When we got back, she finally confessed, "I don't think I can stay with them again for a long time. I can't be responsible for watching teenagers, and you shouldn't travel anywhere far." She couldn't handle the possibility of something happening while they were in her care. I had already decided we wouldn't be taking any more trips until all 3 kids were in college. One of us would always stay with them if the other had to travel, and any parent getaways would be limited to 1 weekend a year at most, within a couple hours of home. When we got home, we hugged all 3 kids tight. I was relieved to be home, and I was eager to sit down and talk with Ava to set everything straight. I naively thought it would take just a little one-on-one conversation to snap her out of it. That evening, Babek and I told our other 2 children to go to their rooms so we could sit down with Ava. We were in the family room, she and I on opposite ends of the couch, her dad across the room. I looked over and saw the same child that I'd had before I left for Thailand. T-shirt, sweatpants, a mop of messy pink-tinted hair. About a year before, she had started dyeing her hair different colors. First, we dyed it blue at the beginning of 8th grade. Schoolmates loved the blue, and it got a lot of attention. Then we colored it red, then purple, then pink. Each successive color got less attention, and Ava loved attention. She was a middle child who craved a way to stand out. I understood that because I was a middle child myself, growing up dark-skinned between 2 fair-skinned sisters and always feeling the need to say, "Look at me." Ava had always used her wicked intelligence and knowledge to stand out, but people got tired of that. Any time she didn't get the attention she needed, it would set off a sadness that seemed out of proportion to the situation. I was tired of her constant cycles of needing attention, followed by depression. I thought that once her Jeopardy-level knowledge wasn't getting noticed any longer, she'd moved on to her hair, and now that the hair wasn't getting attention, she was resorting to this. Saying she was trans to gain attention took things to a whole new level, and I just wasn't going to stand for it. Now that I was safely back in Los Angeles, my emotions had shifted, from the initial sorrow of being away from her during a crisis to being tired of having to navigate yet another difficult period with her. I wanted to wrap this latest episode up and put it behind us as soon as possible. "Tell us what's going on," I said. Ava proceeded to give us a dissertation on being transgender. As I sat there, my mind raced, and I couldn't hear her exact words. It was as if she were the teacher in a Charlie Brown episode, making some wah, wah, wah sounds, until I suddenly heard her end with, "I'm a girl." I looked at her with disbelief, forcing myself to pay attention, while she told us that she wanted to start hormones. She cited resources. She mentioned the Trevor Project, a 24-hour confidential suicide hotline for LGBT teens. She presented us with data. I could feel myself tense up with anger. Why does he have to look up the Trevor Project? Why does he have to pretend that his life is so bad that he needs to consult a suicide helpline? He doesn't understand what a hard life is. My teen years were hard, lonely, brutal. I worked so hard to give them everything I didn't have, to create this family. How dare he try to make this whole thing seem like a bigger deal than it is when it's about his need to get attention? This was so typical of Ava, trying to outsmart everyone by...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?